Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio, where we provide actionable health information on a week-to-week basis that can help you improve your life. Feel free to head over to justinhealth.com, where we have various opt-in video series on more in-depth health topics such as female hormones, thyroid, and gut health. Also, while you're there, feel free and schedule a consult with myself, Dr. J, and or my colleagues. We're available worldwide to provide natural health support for any of your major health issues. Again, welcome to the podcast and enjoy the show. Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Welcome back to Beyond Wellness Radio. I have a phenomenal guest, friend and colleague, Garrett Salpeter. He's here. Garrett runs an amazing clinic down in Austin, Texas, where I am from. Garrett works with professional athletes, you name them, across the board, all sports, people that are trying to recover from injuries and weekend warriors. Garrett has some amazing technology that he has produced, as well as a lot of different clinical techniques that people come to him to apply to help accelerate their healing and allow their body to perform at their max potential. Garrett, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you, Dr. Justin. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to be on the show.
Same here. Well, I've been using your technology for a while, and you've really taken it to the next level the last couple of years, creating your own device called the Neubie. And you also have a lot of education, kinesiological, neurological techniques that you've incorporated into this. So I know a lot of people listening may be potential patients or people that have injuries. Some practitioners may be listening. So how did you stumble across this technology, and how did you kind of bundle it up like you have the last 10 years?
So it's been an interesting journey. You know, I definitely didn't know this is what I'd be doing 10 or more years ago. And the initial catalyst for me was actually an experience I had as an ice hockey player. I played in college, Division III. I was mostly on the practice squad. But I had this amazing experience where I had some torn ligaments in my wrist. I was supposed to be out for 3 months and have surgery. And I worked with a guy who was a chiropractic neurologist. And in working with him and taking a functional neurology approach, as opposed to just a structural or tissue-based approach that you would see in the traditional orthopedic or physical therapy realm. Right. Taking this different approach, I was able to heal the ligaments in 3 weeks instead of 3 months. I was able to avoid surgery, and it really was a tremendous aha moment where I was exposed to this approach and saw firsthand how focusing on the activation of the muscles and addressing these neurological patterns of protection and compensation that happen in the area around the injury, how focusing on that could actually make this profound impact. And so I was already doing my education in engineering. I went on and continued and did graduate school and got a master's in engineering. And with this experience that I had, I knew at the same time that I wanted to do something in this realm professionally. So I was able to find a way I also went back and then did additional graduate work in neuroscience and have been able to combine everything. But that experience was a catalyst for me where, I worked to open up a facility here in Austin over 10 years ago now, and started in 150 square feet in the back of a different chiropractor's office, using older versions of electrical stimulation and some of these techniques from functional neurology. And, it started to grow from there, and I just saw a lot of opportunities to improve the methods and the technology along the way, and that's part of what led to the Neubie device as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I want to talk more about the Neubie, but before we do that, you've blended a lot of techniques, whether it's chiropractic or functional neuro or even soft tissue techniques, to help, let's say, set the foundation so the Neubie and the bioelectric healing that comes from it helps work better. Can you talk about some of the techniques that you use structurally before you really get that device moving with patient care?
Absolutely, yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's worth mentioning that the framework that I'm using first. And I think this is a little bit of a throwback to my days as an engineer, also, where there's this concept of the black box in engineering. We're going to put inputs into the black box, and then we see outputs emerge, and we don't necessarily know what happens in there. It's this theoretical construct, and in some ways, the body is like that. We know from neuroscience and from physiology, and there's a lot, of course, that we know about the body. And yet it also in some ways can be like this theoretical black box. And so what I'm thinking about in any technique that we're evaluating or considering using is, okay, we're thinking of that technique as an input, and then we're looking at what happens within the system, and then we see what output we get on the other end. And if we're giving the right input, we should see an increase in output. And
Right.
so what I mean by that, just for context, is, in the context of someone that we might work with, oftentimes when someone is injured or has surgery, which is, a more intense form of injury, or,
Right.
Is trying to recover from something, it's so interesting that it's not always as much about the original incident or injury as it is about their response to that injury, response to that trauma, and how the body guards and protects and braces
Yes.
around that injured area. And that's a big part of why it takes so long to heal, because just the excessive tension can literally block the flow of blood and nutrients and raw materials that the body would normally use to heal. It also causes these compensation patterns where, since the body is trying to limit movement in certain areas, you develop these patterns of less and less movement over time, and start to move away from and try to unload certain areas and hold excessive tension in others.
So in other words, if someone hurts their right knee, they may develop compensation patterns on the hip superior to that, or on the other side of the body, to help take slack off that injured knee, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. They're going to try, subconsciously, without even realizing it, try to walk more on the other leg and get away from that. And so there's all these interesting things that happen in the response to injury, and because of that, it's interesting that it's the response. The brain and the nervous system actively limit and govern and hold tension in certain areas. Our brain's number one priority is survival and protection. So our brains actually limit us more than trying to get us to do more and do a lot. Our brains want to get us to do less, to make sure that we don't move too far, don't move too fast, don't get hurt. And so it sets up this very interesting input and output process, where, because the brain is such a profound influence that limits the output of the body, if we can find the right inputs to tell the brain, hey, it's okay to allow this muscle to stretch further, or this movement to go faster, or this person to start loading that leg again that had the knee injury that you mentioned, whatever it is, if we can change those inputs, then there's an opportunity to change outputs very, very quickly. Because when we're talking about some of these changes that people make that we'll get into, and when we're talking about some of these manual techniques, one of the coolest things that happen is, I'll use a handheld dynamometer. So I'll do a test on someone's quad. They'll lie down, I'll push down, and they may be at 50 pounds of force on one side, 25 on the other side. So you think, oh my gosh, we have to double this person's strength on the injured leg. That sounds like it might take, a periodized strength program. It might take 16 weeks. It might take 2 years. But we'll do some of these techniques. We'll work on, to actually answer your question now, about some of the techniques, we'll work on certain reflex points. We'll work on areas where the brain is holding tension and protecting, try to break through those defensive and protective patterns. And all of a sudden, in just a few minutes, now that leg that was at 25, now it'll be at 50. It'll be equal to the other side. And you'll start to think, well, gosh, how could you double someone's strength in the span of a few minutes? It's an impossibly short period of time for them to build muscle or make neurological adaptations or do the different things that we think of as needing to happen to increase strength. Obviously, all we did was tap into strength that was already there, lying dormant. So it's like we have this black box somewhere in there as a reservoir of untapped strength. We give the right signal, and now they're able to get more strength out. So it's more of like a software than a hardware thing, but that's the framework.
So it's kind of like if someone has a backup generator in their house and they lose power, and now their house is relying on that backup generator, they may not be able to have the TV on. They may only be able to use a couple of outlets, maybe keep the fridge going. They're limited in regards to the electrical output from that generator versus if their regular power was on. Does that sound right? So it's kind of like we're going back to the regular power supply, which is providing a better essentially input back into the muscle, which then allows the muscle to work better. Does that sound right?
That's a great metaphor, and I would add to it by saying that it's not like the power got turned off, by by a flood or by a lightning strike. It's like
Right.
it's like you purposefully went and turned off your main power breaker. It's like because the brain is intentionally turning off or reducing the output in certain areas, and then it can also choose to go turn it back on.
Exactly. So it sounds like if we're relying on that backup generator, right, we wouldn't go in there and try to put new wiring to the parts of the house that's not working. In other words, we wouldn't go to that muscle that has poor input from the brain and start to exercise it more. We actually want to fix the flow going from the brain down to that muscle. We don't have to go exercise. So that's a kind of the different paradigm is, hey, that imbalance that you mentioned in the muscles, we don't have to create this big strength program. We can just work on that neurological input to that muscle, and then things start to magically balance out without having to do that. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Great.
I think that's a wonderful way of saying it. I hope that's something. I think it is something that would resonate with a lot of people. And so when we think about these different types of manual techniques, or using the Neubie or anything that we're using, we're trying to find the strategic, highest impact inputs that we can use with somebody in order to create more output. And so some of those techniques are, different manual techniques. Like you mentioned, we use a blend of different things from applied kinesiology, osteopathic, chiropractic traditions.
Yep.
A blend of different things. And that's that framework is, it could be, there's a wide range of inputs you could give somebody. As long as you're getting an improved output, then you're doing the right thing, or you're doing something that is beneficial for that person and their nervous system, and is allowing them to tap into more of the potential that they have that's just lying dormant.
100%. And that's one of the things I think that sets you apart from other people that provide technology. There's an education, let's say, that sets the foundation for it to work better. So I know at your clinic in Austin, you see patients virtually. You also offer that device for people virtually, and then clinicians as well. And then you also offer that training. So I think it's important, because when I would see patients, and if you were to just do the device without setting the foundation with those blend of techniques, the results are good, but not quite to great. So I just want to highlight there's an educational aspect that sets the foundation that allows the technology to work better. So some people are just shiny object, but if you can marry the two, I think it's going to work a lot better for anyone listening.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's part of what we've believed to be a complete system in terms of assessments and manual therapeutic interventions and work on the device. So it's definitely something where, every part adds a meaningful piece to the overall equation. And I think the whole is greater than the sum of the parts even.
Correct. And I think the results speak for themselves. We'll talk a little bit more about the tech, and I want you to give us a demo here as well. I know you had a patient a few years back. You posted the progression on your YouTube channel, and the patient had an ACL injury. And the typical ACL injury repair time is usually 9 to 12 months conventionally. I know you had this person within 3 to 4 months back on the field, which is amazing. And I just think those kind of case studies are what resonates with people, and really is like, okay, the proof's in the pudding.
Yeah. So that, there's a few different stories like that we've had, and I'll caution, there are people that are resistant to go back to sport or activity ahead of schedule because they're concerned about graft healing. And so, I don't want any of this to come off as trying to pressure anyone to go out and do anything they're uncomfortable with. Mm-hmm. However, I'll certainly share this, this story because I think it's instructive. One of these that comes to mind is a girl that we worked with, a young woman who was a senior in high school, was already set to go to college to play Division I softball, and her senior year, she was skiing over spring break over Christmas break. On New Year's Day, she tore her ACL. She had surgery middle of January, so about January 15th, and they told her that she was going to be out for at least 7 months, just to forget about her high school softball season and to focus on going and playing college. She'd be able to go start at college in the fall and join the team and everything like that. And yet she loved her high school teammates, and she wanted to see if it was possible to play at all during her high school softball season that spring. And so we started working with her. Her mom, did some research online, found us, and they drove across town and saw us, started working with us a few days a week. And Long story short, she made significant progress. She met all of her milestones a lot faster. She was off crutches in a few days instead of a few weeks. Her range of motion returned in a few weeks instead of a couple months. Her strength levels were back in, 6 to 8 weeks instead of 4 months. And so she just was meeting all these milestones faster. And at the 3-month mark, her surgeon, who's generally a very conservative person who said he would never clear anyone before 6 months, her surgeon looked at her and said, "Wow, this is the most stable knee I've ever seen at this range." And then, they were having the conversation, and he actually cleared her right at 3.5, between 3.5 and 4 months, he cleared her to go out and play. And so in the middle of April, she rejoins her team as they're getting ready for the state playoffs, the state softball playoffs here in Texas. And she actually leads her team to win a state championship in a high school softball season that she was supposed to miss entirely.
That is amazing. I love stories. I love stories like that. And I'll put a link here below for people listening. If anyone's interested in this technology as a patient, even virtually, if you're like, man, do I have someone nearby that can help me with this kind of things? There may be virtual people that can help you on Garrett's team as well. Or if you're interested in the technology, I'll put a link down here below, neu.fit, and then we have a promotion here /justinhealth. And I'll put the link down below. So if you guys are driving and you can't quite get to it, we'll put that down below for you guys. And just if you even have questions about the technology, that could be a great place to get it, answered specifically. So getting back to what you're talking about, Garrett, the thing that I like is the technology, from what I see, is accelerating healing and blood flow to these tissues that are avascular, right? They don't get a lot of blood supply, therefore it takes forever to heal, right? Anyone that's maybe pulled a muscle can heal in a couple of days to a couple of weeks, but cartilage and tendons and ligaments can take months. So you have this technology that's really driving blood flow. You're working on these compensation patterns to get muscles working better, and thus those muscles now are absorbing force. So instead of that force going into the sensitive tissue like tendons and ligaments, now you have muscles that are acting like better, smarter shock absorbers. Is that correct?
I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah. In terms of blood flow, it's definitely the case, as you mentioned, that muscles can heal faster. And I think that makes sense because we're used to, people will go to the gym.
Yes.
And I think most people are aware that, if the muscles are sore or get broken down at all, they're repaired in 48 to 72 hours. So the body is regularly breaking down and rebuilding muscles. So of course it's easier. There's a process in place for that. So it's easier to repair muscle injuries, more challenging definitely to repair those tendon and ligament injuries. And that is such a key to it, is that the muscles have to be able to turn on and create stability, because if they don't, then we end up bracing against or collapsing into those more passive structures, and that's how those tendons and ligaments and discs and cartilage, that's how they get injured. And so I think that there is a whole component to this work that can be protective or preemptive or proactive, where we can work with somebody and actually, by identifying the same dysfunctions that we would treat to help them if they were injured, we can identify those dysfunctions and help them move better, help them perform better, and make them more resistant to injury in the first place. And that's, when you talk about absorbing force, that's one of the most important principles there. And this is one of the differentiating factors between the Neubie, between our technology and what else is out there in this space, in these types of modalities, is that most, for instance, alternating current devices, typically as that signal volleys back and forth, causes muscles to contract, co-contract, fight against each other. So it teaches you to move. Like if you were driving your car, hitting a throttle and the brake pedal at the same time, you're resisting your own movements.
Ah, yes.
And
so like with people kind of know about TENS devices, right? It's kind of like electricity aspirin, right? And that's kind of is that the brake and the gas pedal at the same time? And how's your electric current different?
So a TENS unit, it is like an electronic aspirin, the way most people use it. That's a great way to put it. They usually just put it on at a mild setting to try to distract or mask some of the nerve receptors there that go up to the brain that trigger ultimately within the brain the experience of pain. And so it's like a distraction. It's like if you have a headache, do something to your foot. Oh, you don't feel your head anymore because you're feeling your foot. It's
Right. Yeah.
it's like something like that. But
Yeah.
if you turn it up to a high enough level to really make a difference in neuromuscular re-education, in loading muscles and challenging muscles and teaching them to work in a new way by actually activating the underlying nerve pathways, if you did that, then you'd run into these hurdles or these roadblocks where you'd be causing the muscles to fight against each other because of that signal volleying back and forth, alternating current, and how that interacts with the nervous system. So that, in contrast, the direct current device, I'll show you, the Neubie
That's the Neubie
we use. Yeah. So when we're using that,
I'm sorry. Can you put it up one more time? When I spoke, the video went to me. Go ahead. Try it again.
So we're using that there. So this puts out a unique direct current signal, and when that direct current signal is only going in one direction, it causes a much more controlled input of sensory pathways in the nervous system and a lot less of those contractions and co-contractions. And if we're talking about certainly injury recovery, but even this notion of proactively helping make someone more resistant to injury, that's so important because remember, we want to be able to bend but not break. We want to be pliable and resilient. And so if we're stiff, then that means we're more likely to break and not bend. We're more likely to snap and get those injuries. Whereas if we can use technology like this to amplify that ability of the body to make the muscles more supple, make the tissues more pliable, that'll ultimately make the body more resilient. And I think that shock absorber metaphor that you mentioned is a good way to do that. So this can actually help us re-educate the neuromuscular system to become more pliable, so that we're not resisting our own movements. We're better able to lengthen those muscles to accommodate greater ranges of motion and to absorb force and protect those other structures of the body.
Excellent. So let me summarize. So you have a current that's going to be a direct current that's more harmonious with the body. That's like hitting just the gas pedal, where an alternating current, which is what you see maybe with the TENS unit, is like hitting the gas pedal and the brake at the same time. And it's more just, it's like white noise in a room where people are talking. It's just kind of covering up that chatter or that pain input, where this is actually providing stimulation for oxygenation, which helps tissues heal. It's driving blood flow as well, which provides nutrition in and pulls inflammation out. And then you're also, and I know a little bit, guys, because I did this technique when I had a physical office for many years. I believe in it. I wouldn't be sharing it with you guys if I thought it was something that wouldn't be beneficial. When you are doing scanning of the device, you're also finding specific compensation patterns. So we're not just smacking a pad or an input onto a muscle. We're specifically scanning so we can find those areas that aren't communicating well, so that there's a specific way to target that. And I really want you to show that. And I also want to highlight one thing with the Neubie that's amazing. There's double the amount of outputs that you would typically see on other devices. And this is what really makes it awesome, is with other devices, you'd have to have two machines to do what you can do in one. And I think that's really, really profound. As a clinician, you don't think about it, but it's amazing if you're treating patients, upper body or lower, or patients at the same time. That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's definitely some features and functions that make it, user friendly just from a clinician day-to-day perspective. In terms of that scanning process, that I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is a huge part of that neuromuscular re-education puzzle, where first of all, you need to figure out what the heck to re-educate in the first place.
Correct.
And so this goes back to the response to trauma and how the brain and nervous system are oriented towards survival and protection. And that's why our brains limit us in so many ways. And so if I, for instance, if I'm scanning around on the body with something like this, if I'm scanning around, I'm going to be sending, because of the unique effects of the direct current and how it impacts the nervous system, I'm going to be sending the same signals as if that muscle's being loaded, as if that muscle's being challenged, as if that muscle's lifting weights, or if that muscle's stretching. And so I'm going to be sending these same inputs. And wherever the muscles are working well, my brain will see that input, and it'll just say, oh yeah, that's just, Garrett's arm doing its thing, or that's just that bicep doing what it normally does. There's nothing threatening or or anything about this that needs to be addressed, or no reason to protect against it. And then if I get to an area here where the brain is actually limiting output because of either learned disuse from bad patterns over time, or because of a traumatic injury where I have one of those compensation patterns and my brain is saying, no, don't move there. If I scan over an area like that, then that signal is actually going to be perceived as threatening. That's going to be saying, whoa, you're loading an area at 40 that I only want to be at 20. And the brain is going to say that's threatening, and it's going to trigger this output. So it'll feel like a trigger point or something like that.
Like a hotspot.
You'll actually notice something that's distinct and different in certain areas. And so that's how we know where exactly the brain is imposing those patterns and where we need to change that pattern in order to optimize function and to basically get rid of the impediments that are blocking the healing process, so you can get the blood flow there, so you can get open the floodgates so the body can send those healing resources and the healing process can progress as it should.
I think that's really interesting, because with other devices like a TENS unit, for instance, you're just going to smack it on the muscle. There's not going to be really scanning involved to be ultra specific. And what's really interesting is sometimes where you think the pain is, let's say your lower back, you may scan there, but a lot of the hot spots that come back that are more sensitive when you scan may not necessarily be exactly where the pain is. And that's kind of pulls back into this whole compensation pattern where the compensation may be in a different area than the pain is expressing.
Absolutely. So there's two things. Well, there's even more than two, but there's in the response to injury, there's the original response. There's the original insult, and then there's the response to that. And the response can happen in many areas around that. It can happen on the same side, the opposite side, in synergistic or antagonist muscles. It can happen in other tissues and other areas. It can happen like you originally said. If you injure a knee on one side, you might just start loading the other side more in general. So
Correct.
It can lead to things much further down the chain. And being able to have a process like this where we can map the body and identify where these issues are, it allows us to kind of fill in the gaps and figure out where those patterns or where those problems are presenting, or where they've traveled to, and help really just kind of do it in a very methodical way to work on those issues.
That's excellent. Would you mind showing the Neubie again and just kind of showing where it's a little bit unique with some of these extra outputs? I think it's really fascinating.
Yeah, so we've got 4 there. They're color-coded just for convenience. And
so most would only have 2, like that. Most would only have maybe that green and the yellow, but then with your new technology, you've really modified it to provide extra output.
Extra outputs, yeah. And so, we have either physical therapy clinics or professional sports teams or university athletic departments where they'll have one of these on a station. It's usually like on a cart in a therapy room, and they can have one patient or one athlete using this side of the machine, another patient on the other side of the machine. So they can actually have two patients working on the same machine. And there's a range of presets for mapping in the more therapeutic, or for different work that would be more in the fitness and performance realm, still based in the process of neuromuscular reeducation, right, but would be more of a little bit of a different use case. And so there's ability to move between and among those settings. And one of the things that actually is in our first patent on this technology is the ability to move between preferentially contracting and preferentially lengthening or relaxing muscles.
Oh, wow.
And so, in a session, for example, we can actually help someone contract their muscles to really challenge and build strength in a very targeted, powerful way. And then we can help relax those muscles so they can recover between sets of an exercise, help replenish, send more blood flow to the area, replenish some of the energy, and get ready, and then go do it again, do another set of the exercise and challenge the muscles there. And so, you can contract, and then you got to lengthen back out to prepare those muscles to contract again. And so we can even do switch between those settings within a session sometimes.
That is awesome. Is there anything else you have amazing athletes. You posted on your Instagram a professional hockey player doing some of your exercise routine just yesterday. I thought that was pretty amazing. I know you've had Trent Dilfer, Super Bowl quarterback, come down there and get training as well. What are some of the biggest things that separate you or entice a lot of these professional athletes to work with you? Is it just the fact they want to get better faster, they're in pain, and they're having a hard time recovering? Is it a performance thing? What's their motivation, and what's separating you from most of your competitors?
That's a good question. So thankfully, this has caught on in a few different places, one of which is with elite and professional athletes. And for them, a lot of the value proposition is in the results and the speed at which they're able to see results, because we've probably all had the experience, at least most of us listening to this have had the experience of going in and doing therapy, for some injury, for some pain. And with traditional physical therapy, sometimes it feels like, a mill where they're just trying to get as many people through as they can. There's not much attention. Sometimes it feels like going through the motions. Sometimes it feels like we're doing something for the sake of doing something, and no one's really expecting to see a tangible result from that session. Certainly there's many forward-thinking practitioners and people that care as much as we do about results, and so I'm not describing everybody by any means. But there is I would say a big opportunity for improvement in the traditional therapeutic practices. And so that's the differentiating factor. A lot of times is, we'll have athletes who will have a separated shoulder, like a grade 2 AC separation, for example, can't lift their arm past here and it's painful. And in one session, they'll be up there,
unbelievable,
up overhead. And so,
I know.
So that sometimes it's just the dramatic nature and immediate nature of the results that cause someone to believe like, oh wow, this is really powerful. And then they tell their friends and teammates and colleagues, and it can kind of grow from there.
It's excellent, and you provide amazing education on it, on the functional neurological aspect, and of course you have the newer technology. This may create a lot of questions for listeners. Again, we'll put that link down below, newneu.fit/justinhealth. We'll put that link down below. Garrett and his team would be happy to answer any questions that you guys have, or if you're with this whole coronavirus lockdown, people aren't able to go out, and I know you offer that care where you can do it in-house, where you can mail out a device as well, which could be really convenient during this time, especially if people are in pain or just trying to heal and exercise and not have to do it in a gym setting. So this is a great option for y'all.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something that we, most of the time people have been doing it with a practitioner in a local physical therapy clinic, chiropractic office, integrative medical practice. However, during a time like this, we've been working to make even more. We've had people for whom we've already had to do it, so there's a great model in place. And I think it's being emphasized even more, being able to do things remotely at home. And so we have an infrastructure in place to be able to accommodate people and get most of the results. A vast majority of what we can do in person can still be done remotely.
That's excellent. And what's your opinion in incorporating stem cell technology with more severe injuries and what you do? Have you tried that? Have you seen that? What's your opinion?
That's a great question. So we have a few practices that are using the Neubie in a practice where they do a lot of PRP or stem cell or other regenerative injections. So we have some really good use cases showing that the combination can really be fabulous. And I look at it as, when we're trying to help someone recover from chronic pain, from injury, structural tissue damage, there's two aspects that we need to work on. There's, of course, the structural piece. If there's damage, we want that to be fixed. And there's also the functional piece, where when there's dysfunction, when people aren't using those areas of their body, they need to relearn how to do that. And if you're giving someone stem cells or exosomes or PRP, that can be a fabulous intervention to help them regrow or heal or regenerate on the structural side. And yet, if we don't also address the functional piece, there's a good chance that they might just re-injure or re-damage that area. Again, they've invested thousands of dollars in stem cells, but because they're still collapsing into their knee, into their knee joint in the same way, they're just going to re-injure it. So if they can also work on the functional side, then that can complement the injections or the regenerative work that they're doing, and the two seem to work together very well. I think there's also a really cool bridge, because conceptually, when you're giving someone PRP or stem cells, part of what you're trying to do is actually irritate the target tissue with the needle. so that you trigger the body's own natural healing.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So you trigger that local inflammation and the cascade of different biochemical processes to heal that tissue. And one of the things that we've seen is that the Neubie helps the body heal so much more efficiently from injury. It also can help the body heal more efficiently from that little bit of injury that was intentionally and purposefully induced by the needle. And so the two, it seems like, again, can be synergistic, and I think complementary in a way that leads to better overall outcomes based on what we're seeing so far.
That makes sense. In other words, if we take this analogy and translate it to cars, if we were to do a stem cell injection that helps heal, or it makes their tire more fancy or better looking or heal faster, but the suspension or the axle or the whole shock system isn't fixed, those are the compensation patterns, eventually that tire will wear down again in the future. So we're trying to get to the upstream issue, and if we combine the two, it'll be better.
Absolutely. I think you got to work on both, and any approach that doesn't address both is going to, leave some sort of shortfall somewhere.
That's excellent. Garrett, is there anything else you want to leave the listeners with today?
So I believe very, very strongly that the most powerful and transformative way to help people recover from pain and injury is to focus on the nervous system and work on these areas that we've been talking about. And I've seen people recover from incredible things. Like, we've seen people use our technology to regain function, to get out of wheelchairs or start walking again after spinal cord injuries, or start moving again after debilitating bouts with MS or things like that. And so, even if someone doesn't work with us or any of our practitioners, I really want to shift the dialogue and start introducing into dialogue the nervous system and how powerful working with the nervous system can be and how empowering it can be. And I want people to know that if you're facing chronic pain, or you're having trouble getting back to function, or if you're frustrated because you can't play basketball and tennis with your kids because your joints always hurt, there can be solutions out there. And I would just encourage people to look at the power of this functional neurology approach and how it can help, certainly with pain and movement, and also things related to the autonomic nervous system. And just there's a whole range of things, because the nervous system controls so much about the body. I would just think neurology. I think if I had to summarize it in 2 words.
I love it. That's excellent. So for anyone listening here that's from the Austin area or wants to travel down to Austin, Garrett's got a great clinic right on the 360 highway in Westlake, right near the Rudy's Barbecue. So anyone from Austin knows 360 and Rudy's. They'll know exactly where that is. And then if you guys want to reach out, go ahead.
For anyone not in Austin, you'll be amazed to know that one of the best barbecue places is actually inside a gas station.
It is. And so anyone wants to fly in, you got the gas station next door with some great barbecue. And if you guys want to reach out, we have that special link for you guys today, neu.fit/Justin Health. We'll put it down below so you guys can click. And if you want to get more information on Garrett's educational programs, click there. If you want to get information on the device, click there. Or being a patient virtually, all that's going to be there for you. Garrett, anything else?
So that is, you mentioned the educational piece. That is one thing that we definitely take very seriously, that for clinicians who get our device, we have a whole certification education program with continuing education and ongoing support. And that's something that, if you are a practitioner, we'd love to share with you, because, the device is good, and yet without the knowledge, it wouldn't be nearly as good. So the system and the thinking behind it is something that we love to share with people as well.
And I'll give Garrett a pat in the back. Garrett was also a PhD candidate at UT, studying this technology at a PhD level. And obviously his clinic's gotten so big, he's prioritizing his patients over that now. But Garrett has a higher level of understanding that we're not even talking about here, because we want to keep it simple. So Garrett's the main man to reach out for more education on that. Garrett, thanks so much for being a part of the podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Justin. It was a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to beyondwellnessradio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.